You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Lucy Norris, and on today's episode, I'm sitting down with podcast entrepreneur and professional speaker. A Massachusetts native, this week's guest struggled to find his life's path. After deciding college wasn't for him, despite numerous offers from baseball recruiters, he set about testing the waters with a variety of jobs until he fell into what would eventually lead him to his biggest turning point yet. Making good money working in construction, no one could have guessed that he was on the verge of suicide, and following a near attempt, he realized something had to change. Quitting his job and diving headfirst into his passion for podcasting led him to create the life he's living successfully today. Sharing how he turned his dream into a reality, here's what it's like to be Kevin Palmieri. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. I like to kick every episode off by going all the way back and revisiting your childhood a little bit and just having a chat, as weird as that sounds, but just having a chat about what that experience was like for you growing up.
So number one, thank you for having me. And number two, as weird as it may be for other people, we talk about stuff like that all the time. So I would absolutely love to. So for me, I grew up in a single family household. I didn't really meet my dad until I was like 27. Okay. So I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. Honestly, like, even though it was kind of a weird childhood, for the most part, it was pretty normal. I played baseball. I was pretty decent in school. We never had a ton of money, so that was kind of always a thing for me. To this day, it's still something that motivates me to give to my family what I didn't really have necessarily. But honestly, like, there was never really any super traumatic things. Nothing really stands out from my childhood, but I honestly think I probably blocked a lot of stuff out because growing up without a dad is a hard thing, especially when, you know, you're a boy and everybody asks you, oh, where's your dad? He's not at the baseball games. What does your dad do for a job? Don't know. I didn't even know my dad's name for a long time. So that kind of is the outline of my childhood, was like that big thing is what I dealt with for most of my life. I didn't realize how much it impacted me until later in life. Like, during my childhood, it was just kind of normal. Yeah. And now looking back, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to connect a lot of dots of like, well, maybe this is why the way it is.
And so then as you were growing up, as you said, you were always ongoing dealing with that not having a father figure in your life. How did you find navigating what your interests were going to be, you know, what you were going to do when you left school? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I knew when I graduated high school, I knew I wasn't going to college. I had zero interest in it. All my friends were going. But I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a personal trainer, and I knew you didn't have to go to college for that. Like, you can, but you don't have to. So I filled out a couple applications. I applied to a couple of colleges. I was getting recruited by a couple of baseball teams because I was pretty good at baseball. But I told my mom and my grandmother that, like, honestly, this isn't for me. Like, I'm not going to do this to please everybody else. I told my guidance counselor the same thing. Like, I'm not going. I have no interest in going. I don't need this. I don't feel like I need this. So for me, it was kind of like, I learned a lot of this stuff on my own, Lucy, honestly. Like, I learned a lot of what to do in life on my own and by not doing what other members of my family did. Because a lot of my family went to jail. They had addiction problems. So for me, it was like, okay, don't do that. I'm not sure exactly what to do, but I know not to do that. And I tried to just kind of find my way. You know, I try to find my way on my own for the most part.
And so what did you do when you left school? Did you go and pursue personal training? Or it sounds like you had quite an entrepreneurial spirit, maybe without even realizing it at the time.
Yeah, I never considered myself an entrepreneur. Like, literally until like last year, I was like, oh, I guess I kind of am. I'm starting like 2 businesses. It's this whole thing. So when I left high school, when I graduated high school, I was like, for a while, I was the townie gas station guy. Like, genuinely, I was the guy that everybody knew, who worked at the gas station, who went to school there, who lived down the street, I didn't really have a direction. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And, you know, I had a high school education. I wasn't really good at anything. So I think I stayed at that gas station for like 4 or 5 years. And then it was like, all right, I think it's probably time for me to like figure my stuff out. Then I ended up working at a hospital as like a housekeeper. Then I ended up becoming a personal trainer. That ended up happening. Then I ended up becoming a truck driver. I went to the fire academy and became a firefighter for a short time.
Wow.
And then I ended up landing this really high paying job, which took me through the next, like basically the last 5 years before I started this journey. Like I haven't had a real job in 4 years now, really.
And what was that that last job you did? It sounds like you have a wealth of life experience just from going through all of your jobs. But I'm interested to hear more about that last job, because I feel like that might have been where a turning point came into your life to, I guess, lead to the chapter that you're in now, which is, fully doing what you wanted to do. So can you talk me a little bit through that last, I guess, chapter of that life, and then how it led into the one you're living now, if that makes sense?
I was a very interesting time for me because I was broke. I didn't like, I was doing the fire academy thing, but getting a job as a firefighter is a very difficult thing to do because so many people want the position. And if you're in the military, you get first crack. So for me, it was like, I don't know anybody. I'm not related to anybody. I didn't do the military. I think this is probably a long shot for me to get a job as a firefighter. So I was kind of at this like crossroads, and I felt stuck, and I felt like a loser because I wasn't making good money, and I had no prospect to make good money. I had no expertise. Like I didn't know what to do. But my girlfriend at the time, her aunt worked for like a city company who helped people get jobs. And I was like, all right, I'll go try it. I'll see what happens, whatever. So I do like 4 days of training on what's called weatherization. So just think of like weather stripping, windows, attic work, stuff like that, insulation. And the last day I passed the course and I'm talking to the head of the company, and she says, okay, I have somebody who I'm going to send you to. You're going to start between $40 and $50 an hour. And I was like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, you're going to be making like 50, 60, $70 an hour sometimes. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, yeah, it's awesome. Like, this is a great job for you. You're going to have to travel because these guys work all over the place, but you seem like you're a very good fit for them. So I was like, okay, I don't think this is real. Honestly, I don't think this is real. So she said, it'll probably be a couple months because they're going through some stuff right now, but I'll make sure they reach out when it happens. And I was like, all right, whatever. I remember the day I got the call from my boss. I was at the movies. And like literally I had no money. I don't even know how I paid for the movies. And my boss called me and said, hey, can you come to the building? I want to meet you. I want to talk to you. And I was like, this is awesome. Okay, cool. So I go, and him and I are like, I'm wearing these like super nice clothes because I thought it was like a job interview. And we're working in this like trailer, like cleaning it out. So I was like, all right, this is pretty weird. But he's like, all right, man, there's some other people in line, but I feel like you're a better fit. I feel like you have a great personality. You have a growth mindset. You're a really nice dude. Like, I think you're going to fit in here. Let's do this. He said, so our first job is in Delaware, and I live in Massachusetts. So Delaware is like an 8-hour drive.
Oh, okay. So my American geography is so bad. I wouldn't know that.
So my boss, who I met for the first time that day, and I had never done this line of work ever in my life, was like, the first job is in Delaware. We leave Sunday, so meet me here Sunday. We'll drive 8 hours down. We rented this big house. You're going to live in a house with 7 strangers you've never met. I've never been that far out of the state. And also you're going to be making $50 an hour. Like, here you go. And I remember my first week down there, I didn't have enough money to buy real groceries. I literally bought bread, deli meat, and chips. And I ate that every single day for lunch because I didn't have enough money at the time to buy groceries. And it was this like weird time in my life. But the job basically was construction. Basically, we would go into schools, banks, police stations, libraries, town halls, and we would make those buildings more energy efficient. So the work was good. It was busy. I traveled a lot. I made good money. But yeah, that was the last piece before the entrepreneurial journey for me.
It's so crazy how it all kind of 180 for you so fast as well. So I guess the big thing I'm wondering is, what was it about that situation that perhaps left you feeling unfulfilled, or that, you know, you didn't want that to be a reality for the rest of your life? Because I'm guessing that you didn't, because obviously you're not doing that now. So,
Yeah.
talk me through that turning point moment for you.
Sure. So in 2015, by all outside standards, I had the life of any man's dream. I was 25 years old at the time. I had a beautiful girlfriend. She was literally a model. I had just done a bodybuilding show, so I was in the best shape of my life. I had this high-paying job. I had a brand new sports car. I had a nice apartment. I had great friends. Like, from the outside looking in, I had this amazing, amazing life. And some people have the misfortune of hitting rock bottom. Unfortunately, I found out that rock bottom also has a basement. So when I was 25 in 2015, my girlfriend ended up leaving me because I was depressed. Nobody knew. I was anxious. Nobody knew. I was insecure. Nobody knew. And I wasn't a good boyfriend. I wasn't mean or bad in any way. I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain. And my girlfriend at the time wanted to travel and live in California, and I was terrified of that. So I told her not to do that. So she left. And when she left, for the first time in my life, I had to take a look in the real mirror of, like, who is Kevin? And what does Kevin actually think? How does he feel? What does he believe? And I realized, Lucy, that I'm not confident. I wasn't confident. I was super insecure. I put so much of my happiness in my validation on external things, on the car, on how much money was in my bank account, you know, on what my body looks like, on all of those things. And after she left me, I hit rock bottom. Like, my bills doubled. I was living in this big 2-bedroom apartment by myself, paying for everything. Work was slow, so money wasn't coming in like it used to. And I remember this was like my initial dive into personal development. I started saying positive affirmations. I am handsome. I am smart. I am talented. I am worthy. And this year, I am going to make the most money I've ever made in my entire life. And unfortunately, Lucy, I leaned on that last one a little too much. I really, really wanted to make money. For some reason, I thought that would fix my problems. So beginning of 2016 starts, and I am like full-time in this job that we had just spoken about. I'm traveling all over the place, everywhere, hotel to hotel, gone 5 days a week, every week. We get to the end of the year. Out of the 12 months, I traveled for 10. I was literally gone that much. And I was only home 1-2 days a week, maybe. Right? Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, where else? Everywhere. I was just all over the place. So I get my last pay stub. And my goal that pushed me through the entire year was to make $100,000 at the age of 26 with no college degree. And I'm sitting at my kitchen table, kind of like I am right now. And I looked down and I did. I made $100,000 at 26 years old with no college degree before any of my friends. Not that any of that even matters, but it did at the time. It mattered to me at the time. And I had this same, like, oh my God, you did it again. Nothing changed. I still was insecure. I still wasn't confident. And I, even more so now than ever, put so much of my external happiness or validation into all that other stuff. I wanted everything I had to make me feel good, and it didn't do it. So I went to bed that night, and I remember thinking, it doesn't matter what car's in the driveway. It doesn't matter what, you know, what your girlfriend looks like, how much money you have in the bank, what you're doing today, what you did, you know, what you're going to do tomorrow. What matters is up here. And that's where hyperconscious was born. I had been living most of my life unconsciously, just kind of like going through the motion. And I was like, what's the opposite of that? Hyperconscious. Cool. So I end up starting a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast, right? And the job, literally overnight, I went from wanting to make as much money as possible to wanting to do the podcast full time. And that job that gave me all this money now took me away from the podcast. So every week I was more miserable and miserable because I'm in a crusty hotel room in New Jersey. I'm working in Virginia Beach and it's miserable. I don't like it, right? And I can't record the podcast on the road. So this job that gave me so much opportunity now took away what felt like so much opportunity. And it kept getting worse. And I was calling out of work. And I was literally like leaving for work at like 2 a.m. just so I could sleep in my bed for a couple hours, driving 5 hours to the job site, working an 8-hour day, going to the gym. On Friday, I would do the opposite. Like my days were, you know, sometime 20, 22-hour days. And it just got so bad that I just stopped caring about the job. Like I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about getting in trouble. I just didn't care anymore. So We are in a hotel room in New Jersey. It's sometime in the winter. It was towards the end of the year in 2017. And I'm sitting on the edge of the bed in the morning, like 5:45 in the morning, and I'm lacing up my work boots. And I've done this so many times before. This is just normal. Lace up my work boots. We're going off to work. And the best way I can describe it is there's 10 televisions on in my head at the same time. And every single one of them is playing a different station. So one is saying you're stuck here. One is saying you can never leave this job. One is saying, what will your family think? What will your friends think? You're never going to make $100,000 again doing something else. And then the loudest voice is saying, do you really think you could ever be a successful podcaster? And I'm sitting there on the end of this bed, like just with the most anxiety and the most darkness. And I genuinely felt like in that moment, if I ended my life, I would have ended all my problems too. And this is my rock bottom basement moment, feeling the most alone, 5 hours away from anybody who loves me, not having any idea what I'm going to do. I put so much into this job that I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make money any other way. And I genuinely thought that if I killed myself, I would take my problems with me. Now, luckily, I didn't do that. I reached out to the co-host of the show, Alan, and I said, hey, man, I'm feeling bad. This is the way I'm feeling. I don't know what to do. And he just kind of talked me through it. And he told me, like, look, you've changed a lot. You have this podcast. You're confident, like the most confident you've ever been. And you're doing all this stuff that you don't want to do. It's time for you to make a change. And 3 or 4 months later, I left that job. I went full-time into podcasting, into coaching, into speaking. And, we just crossed episode 437 or something. I have a podcast agency now. I'm a professional speaker. I'm a coach. So things are weird for me now because I am living my dream at this point. And the dream still has nightmares. Don't get me wrong. There's hard days, and it's difficult and there's a lot of adversity, but it's the adversity that I chose. And I love what I'm doing now more than I ever could have imagined. So that's why I left that job.
Yeah, well, that's a crazy story to go with that. But I think it's so interesting because I feel like more people than what, the general public would assume go through things like what you went through, where there's so much external pressure to have money, have all these things because of, I don't know, social media or whatever it is. But yeah, I can see how you could really get, wrapped up in that and all consumed by it, exactly as you explained there. And so I'm wondering, what do you think, or what helped you, or what was your top tip for taking yourself when you're at such a low point? I know you reached out to Alan, who I spoke to as well. He's amazing. But how did you physically, get yourself up to get through those last 3 months, make that big life change? What did you do to remove yourself from that desperate situation, I guess?
It was a couple things, Lucy. Number one, in that moment where I wanted to die, I found my purpose. Like, I never felt like I had a purpose before. I want to be the person, and I don't even want to. I need to be the person that I needed at my lowest point. Like, I have to be that. It's not even an option for me anymore. I'm all in on this. And it's the reason I live my life the way I do. Like, when I have my journal over here, and when I journal, I write some things down. One of the things I write down is I am down to earth and relatable. I want people to always be able to relate to me, because if you think I'm above you in any way, shape, or form, I won't be able to help you. And I'm not. I'm not above you in any way, shape, or form. I've just done more work. That's all. Like, I was the gas station guy. Genuinely, I was the guy at the gas station whose friends were away at college getting their degrees, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I don't ever want people to forget that. So number one, I used my pain as my purpose. That's number one. And then I understood, like, look, this isn't going to be easy at all. I chose a much harder road, but I know it'll be worth it. Number two, change up who you're spending time with. Honestly, like, you spoke with Alan, you know how confident Alan is. Alan's an amazing, amazing man. He has helped me so much because his undying self-belief rubbed off on me. I never believed in myself. I always had work ethic, and I always could kind of suffer more than anybody else could, but I had to, like, use my strengths to get around people who had strengths that I didn't. So Alan, the first time he worked with me, was like, dude, I'll never work with anybody again. You work so hard. You're so humble. You're so consistent. You always show up. Alan had the brains that I wanted. He's so smart. I need that. I need to learn more. He had the confidence I needed. So now, it's been 3.5 years, 4 years we've been working together. He has brought out the best in me. I've been able to bring out the best in him. And for every weakness he has, I have a strength. For every strength he has, I have a weakness. So I think it's super important to lean into your strengths and get around people who are going to help you bring up your weakness. Because at the end of the day, we all have a weakness, whether it's confidence or ego, whether it's lack of action or not smart action. Like, we all have a weakness, and our natural reaction is not to spend time with people who have that strength because it's polarizing. It feels bad when you're insecure to be around somebody who's confident. So, long answer to your short question, live for something greater than yourself. Contribution. Most people lack contribution. And then get around people who have what you want.
And so you mentioned that you kind of already had the bones of the Hyperconscious podcast going while you were working. But I'd be interested to know how you then did take that passion project, I guess the side hustle type vibe, and turn it into your everyday job.
Yeah, I honestly, and this is a quote, I don't know the exact quote, but burn your boats. Like, that somebody said that. I think it was a wartime quote. Like, we land on the island and we burn the boats, so we have no other option other than to fight and win this thing. For me, like, when I left my job behind, I had no way of making money. So it was like, I'm all in on this. So it's been this process of, okay, I have enough money to live. And I don't ever suggest anybody does what I do. Don't just quit your job. Like, I would transition into something like maybe a side gig, work part-time somewhere. I was so over it because I'd been working since I was 16. Like, I'm done with that. I'm not working for anybody else anymore. So I wouldn't suggest that. But for me, it was this process of understanding, okay, right now, I'm not super talented when it comes to podcasting. I'm like 30, 40, 50 episodes in. Like, I'm not super talented. I'm not like knowledgeable enough to be a mindset coach. Like, I don't know enough where I feel like I can coach somebody else. So it was that process of leveling up my skills and then kind of testing the waters and seeing like, okay, can I speak? I'm not really that great of a speaker yet either. Okay, well, maybe that'll come in the future. And then leveling it up. And it went from, a $75 a week client, like just mindset, to $100 a week clients, to doing the podcast agency where now people pay me, anywhere from $250 an hour to, several $1,000s a month to do their podcast stuff. So I would say the longer you can stay in the pool, the better you will learn to swim. And I think so many people have to know like the how. Like, well, how am I going to monetize my show? If you don't do your show long enough, you're not going to. So it doesn't matter, right? Like, and you're a podcaster, you know how it goes. So many people come to me and say like, all right, Kev, I'm 7 episodes in. It's awesome. I love it. How soon before I can monetize though? And I always say like a couple of things. You're probably not good enough yet to monetize. That's fine. When you're playing Little League, you don't play in the major leagues. It's just the way it works, right? So I think for me, it was just staying in the pool long enough and I wanted to make this my reality so badly that I'm willing to learn almost anything in order to do it. Like, I've learned so much about sales, not because I wanted to, because I had to. And then I turned that necessity into desire.
But I'd also be interested to know, I mean, you and Alan have done an amazing job with your podcast. Like you said, you have over 400 episodes, which is absolutely mental. And you spoke to some really incredibly interesting people. So what do you think is the biggest learning, or do you have a few things that you've learned throughout your time podcasting that has really impacted on your life?
In terms of podcasting or in terms of like general personal development knowledge?
I guess we'll go with both. So first podcasting and then second personal development.
So with podcasting, consistency matters more than anything. Most podcasts last between 7 episodes and 21 before they call it quits. Because honestly, this part, and you know this part is easy. The talking to the microphone part is not super hard.
No.
After you've done it enough, it's the like, I misspoke. I have to edit that out. Okay, I have to do the teaser clips. I have to post it. I want to do the YouTube. That's the stuff that is difficult. So when it comes to podcasting, I would say this. I would try to find a way, and this is going to sound very simple, but try to find a way to make money podcasting early so you can delegate the stuff you don't want to do so you can become a better podcaster. You should be speaking more. So if you want to become a podcaster, do more interviews with other people. When I am talking to my clients, I send audio messages. Everything I'm doing is so I can become a better speaker, because that crosses over to the podcast. So that would be one thing. One thing is consistency. 2, find a way to monetize, even if it's just enough for you to like delegate some work. Number 3, I would say raise your standards. I have had so many people who say like, my audio, it's good enough. No, it's not. If you think your audio is good enough, your listeners probably don't think it's good enough. So I think so many people, and if you're just starting, awesome. Just start. I'd rather you start on a cell phone in the park with the wind howling. That's fine. But you got to raise your standards if you want to raise your results. And most people want extraordinary shows with lackluster effort, with lackluster production, with lackluster topics. You know, it's just, that's the way it works. And then in terms of personal development, it's interesting. We just did a top 10 takeaways from 430 episodes. I would say the number one takeaway is your adversity is your advantage, but only if you have the right mindset.
I know with COVID and everything at the moment, it's so difficult to even predict what's happening tomorrow, let alone next year or the year after. But if you could say what you would love the next few years to look like for you and for your podcast and your brand, what is the overall mission, I guess, that you want to achieve with this?
Honestly, it's interesting. I've gotten asked that question a lot lately. I want my life, my brand, my business, my impact to just be exponential. I just want to keep growing the brand, the business, the podcast, financially, but I want my character to continue growing as well. We always say character first. All the money in the world doesn't matter if you're broken inside. All the money in the world doesn't matter if you're, not a good person. I know it's a kind of a blah answer, but that is it. Like, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I just want to keep doing it better.
No, it's not a blah answer. I think it's it's what you want. No, and I just think it's interesting. I feel like the reason why everyone's asking everyone so much is because maybe everyone feels a little bit lost at the moment, or no one can see what's happening, so they're kind of like, what are you gonna do? What's your plan? That's interesting to hear from you, and I like to think about building character before anything else. I think that's really nice. And I think that through listening to your story and, if anyone that knows you online or anything like that, it is clear that you've had success in your life. You've experienced success. You've experienced, I guess, the cliche version of success in terms of finance and all that kind of thing. But then also in terms of, as you just said, character building, you've definitely achieved success in that area too by following your passion project and turning it into your day job. So I was wondering if you did have a personal definition of what the word success means to you.
Oh, man. Success to me is being able to go to bed, and when I lay my head down on the pillow at the end of the night, know that I was the best version of Kevin in every single opportunity that I had. Success for me is just being a beacon of hope. And people seeing like, this is a real dude who's doing this. He's a good guy, even behind the scenes. He's the same. For me, that's like success. And everything else that comes with it is awesome. But it's internal for me. And I think success has to be internal. Because if it's not, you're going to live the old Kevin life and you're going to try to be successful. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you have experienced the external success already. So if anyone knows, you do. And then I do just have one more question for you, and I'll let you get on with your morning. If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you today, having been through everything you've been through in your life, both in terms of career and personal life as well, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give that 10-year-old self moving forward in life?
Oh, man. Just because it's not your fault doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. So it's not my fault my dad left. I was a child. I didn't, he left when I was so young. I don't even know if I couldn't even talk. So it's not my fault. It's not my fault my family was broke. It's not my fault for a lot of the things that have happened in my life. But it can be your responsibility to make it better. And I think that with a lot of people, it's all or nothing. It's like, it's not my fault. It's not my problem. Not true. Not true. Just because it's not your fault doesn't mean it's not your problem. Actually, more often than not, it is your problem. And the person who's at fault has already left. But it's your responsibility now to do something with that. And I think for me, make sure you have perspective. So that's what I would say. Perspective and understanding that just because it's not your fault doesn't mean it's not your responsibility to make the best of it. I think that would change it.
I love that. I think the thing about it, exactly what you just said, it's not your fault, but that doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. When you said that, that really, I don't know, it hit home or something. It really made me think. So yeah, I really like that. And I think all of your insights have been so interesting, and I'm very grateful to have heard them and then to be able to share them with everyone that listens. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for giving up your morning. I know it's so early for you, and sharing all of your wisdom and insight. So thank you so much, Kevin. It's been great chatting with you.
I appreciate you, and I love what you're doing. Keep doing the good thing.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please rate, share, and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. To find out more about Kevin and to listen to the Hyperconscious podcast, visit the links provided in the show notes. I'll be back next week with more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luz.